So we start the game with a flashback, one of many to follow, to the end of the first game for context, and we see Joel killing every firefly nearby to save Ellie. Since she was immune, the doctor had wanted to see about manufacturing a remedy or cure to the cordyceps brain infection, but it wasn't guaranteed. But it would have guaranteed Ellie would have died. The reckless nature and miscommunication between both parties is the whole foundation of what happens in the sequel. I still, however, find it plot-armored and dumb as hell that Joel carried an unconscious child and was able to escape without being captured or gunned down by the fireflies. I wonder if his plot armor will last forever. It surprises me that a guitar of this quality has strings that sound so good. Do they have an ex-employee from Guitar Center living in Jackson with Joel? Not even 1 minute into catching back up with Ellie, and we are already into romantic drama.
She kissed me. It was just Dina being Dina.
We don't get the context behind this drama until the end of the game, but basically Dina kisses Ellie at a barn dance, and the old cute Seth with Joel coming in to defend Ellie, and Ellie saying, "No, don't help me, I'm big girl now." I would think two girls kissing would be the least of people's concerns when infected and murderous people could be invading at any given time. Plus, less chance of getting knocked up if you're lesbian. Not that anyone is pregnant in the sequel or anything.
I think I'm pregnant.
I'm surprised they are sending out 3 teenagers out into the wilderness for an assignment. I realize they are all pretty capable, but shouldn't at least one adult accompany all of them? Throughout the game, both Ellie and Abby seem to take the most dangerous and riskiest routes to get to their destinations, potentially falling down ravines or getting hypothermia from cold streams. But hey, the game wouldn't be fun or exciting if they went about the smart way and just walked through some bushes or around a big old building. Abby and Owen somehow pinpointed Joel's location to this exact town, and only Owen has discerned the exact outposts that teams make rounds to, noting their sizable numbers in ammunition. Abby says, "Screw it, we're doing it live," and starts heading to the outpost by herself. That's some good old emotionally driven plot-armored revenge over critical thinking. Owen says that Mel is pregnant because there has to be at least one main character in a zombie apocalypse that has to be knocked up. Abby stumbles onto tons of dead bodies in the snow, one of which I definitely had to question how it got frozen in place while standing up. This infected was just waiting, buried underneath the snow, for a survivor to just happen by? This is just a normal infected, it's not a special variant like the clicker or a stalker. Why was he waiting there quietly to attack? Aren't they supposed to be jittering around frantically or at least looking for a source of warmth? Abby and the infected both conveniently fall downhill and land right next to each other without any crippling injuries so they can face each other in hand-to-hand combat. The infected start coming in one after another, but thankfully they are each polite enough to let you finish your fight with the last zombie. Here is another instance of taking probably the most dangerous route as Abby crawls under this rickety old cabin, which conveniently a runner thought to check below there as well, and to give us suspense, starts going after Abby. Ellie sure is lucky that every collectible card she finds is completely different to add to her collection. I've been opening Pokemon card packs religiously in the last few weeks, and I've been getting duplicates like crazy. Ellie and Dina stop and get off their horses to look at a ripped apart and bloodied moose corpse. You think they would be used to seeing stuff like this by now, but they stop, look it over slowly, discerning that yes, it was probably infected that did this. Dina asks how the infected got in the building, and then you look slightly to the left and there's your answer. This runner infected decides to not make noise right now and pulls another sneaky, and ninja jump scares Ellie after crawling out from under the truck. They're going to this supermarket that apparently hasn't been searched by anyone in Jackson in the 4 years it has been fortified. Ellie is able to insta-stealth kill clickers now with a switchblade instead of making a shiv and wasting it every time. Someone should probably tell Abby how to do that, or at least break their necks because she's just that strong. The only apparent exit is to precariously climb a makeshift rope up a rickety air conditioning shaft. Boy, it sure is lucky for them that this store had 2 wide open doors for horses to get in easily, but there not being any infected as well. Why are they growing weed in a hideout basement? Is it illegal to smoke, or just this guy's secret stash? It feels like this was put there just for gamers to go, yo, dank, bro, and content creators to play smoke weed every day, rather than feel natural. Okay, I have to take a sin off here for the adult reference to one of Naughty Dog's first games. Smash Brandy's cooch? Hilarious. Well, nothing better to do. Infected might sneak in, but hey, les get high, with some glass shards sprinkled in the bud. You gotta love how the forced linear experience will make certain ledges look climbable, but are actually invisible walls. I do find this scene of the horde slowly pushing the fence more and more down towards Abby very well executed and nail-biting. I'm gonna remove a sin. Realistically speaking though, when this runner had Abby pinned down, this would have been ample time for the rest of the horde to knock the fence down or climb over it to dogpile her for a feast of fists. And we get the person she's been hunting for, Joel, of all people, saving her right in the nick of time before anything I said would occur.
Where the hell they all come from?
You know, Tommy, I usually ask the same thing. This infected attack in the gondola room was pretty fun and honestly pretty real as they bleed into the room. Minus one sin. One of the few times gunshots actually attract hordes. Which got me thinking, how did the infected not hear these gunshots most of the time throughout the game? Probably because they are all wearing everyday E25 earbuds, made by today's sponsor, Raycon. These fancy boys are so comfy, stylish, and good at keeping external noise out that if Ellie or Abby stealthily put them on a clicker, let's just say they would have a much easier time taking them out or getting around them. Regardless, at merely half the price of its competitors, the Raycon Everyday 25 earbuds compare with just about any Bluetooth device with ease, with this fancy portable holding case that can easily charge these bad boys through just about any USB port, holding a charge for up to 6 hours. I use them personally while I edit my videos all day for a pristine audio bass boosted playback, not driving my roommate Ven crazy playing the same audio over and over again over speakers while I edit said audio, helping me focus a bit more on the content with less external distractions and without the hassle of juggling wires that one of my 3 cats would have used as their personal chew toy. And you can have that experience too. You can get your own pair of the everyday E25 earbuds in a variety of colors and sizes to suit your needs and ear-related comforts. Go to buyraycon.com/staywow to get 15% off your order. And if you don't feel like typing all that out, you can just click the link in the description box below to send you right there. You know what? Now let's get back to the sins. Abby went off on her own looking for Joel and finds him with only Tommy while being attacked. How convenient! Finding and getting on their horses, who didn't run away in fear from the infected just in time for the horde to almost catch up with them. Jesse, Dina's ex, shows up right after a clam bam session the day after the breakup. Woohoo! Drama! What is up with this horde? There is a loud as hell blizzard that made it to where Ellie and Dina couldn't hear each other earlier, but these runners and clickers that use echolocation are hearing every single human footstep and horse footstep to come at them as the survivors get away on horseback. But more and more of these infected keep showing up in the blistering cold from every single direction as they try to get to the mansion, but not towards the mansion itself, but to the trio so they can get to the gates just in time for the horde to hit the bars. Lucky for them, they got there in time. Owen plays it smart, telling everyone to save their ammunition as he lights up the horde with a Molotov. Being smart earns a sin off. Once the group knows who they have directly in front of them, they change their demeanor and waste no time shotgun blasting Joel in the knee. And man, does it look brutal. Too bad Joel doesn't have the plot armor or magic medkits to heal this up. Abby is about to explain why they're doing what they're doing to Joel, but you know what? Joel's just like, nah. You know what? For once, let's not spend 10 minutes flashbacking and using dialogue. Let's let future flashbacks in the story explain why this is going on. We don't need to build up for what's to come this early in the game or anything. Coincidentally, the mansion Abby's group is held up in, where Joel and Tommy are held hostage, is the exact same destination that Ellie goes to check on for Joel. Ellie is able to sneak in just in time to witness Joel on the ground dying. Even the characters are asking why no one was keeping lookout for her to barge in like this. They aren't far away from Joel's camp, and you would think 1 or 2 people would have kept watch while they were finishing the job on Joel. And here we go, the most controversial and most brought up point for every gamer and critical reviewer of The Last of Us 2. Joel is unceremoniously killed by a golf club without a single word to Ellie as she is forced to watch it happen. This isn't some Tony Stark in Avengers Endgame shit. It's just flat. For a character that was built up and developed so well in the first game to be killed off this early in the sequel after all the promotional material leading up to launch. This major character death feels very flat and undeserved, as many would agree. I'll be adding 10 sins for this awful way the writers had Joel go. However, in a world as dark and brutal as one 24 years into the lawless landscape of a zombie apocalypse, shit like this would happen to anyone at any time. Death isn't always a large buildup or some spectacular event in real life. It can be swift and unexpected, especially from the perspective of Abby's group, who see this heartless man that murdered dozens and even hundreds of their people who were just trying to find a cure. I know it's controversial to say, but that's just the brutal consequences Joel had to face after his actions, and how for once the supposed villains don't just sit there and dilly-dally around when they can easily kill the enemy right in front of them. I'll be taking off 5 sins for the cold harshness of this world this game is putting on display. Whoa. They decide to keep Ellie and Tommy alive. I can maybe see why they would keep Ellie alive because she's a young girl, but Tommy? Ellie and Tommy are people who witnessed Joel's death, saw their faces and patches that said Washington Liberation Front. Why would this group risk them coming back for their lives? They should know how people seeking revenge can find a way to hunt you down because they themselves did just that right then and right there. But no, Ellie can't also die here because the story has to happen for her new arc to begin, and they can't kill anyone else besides Joel because that was their mission. Big brain moves on Abby's group and the writers. 5 more sins. And I still want to know how they even tracked down Joel in the first place. They are from Seattle, and Joel is in the small town of Jackson in Wisconsin. That's almost a 1,000-mile trip. Did they have a Fallout 3 questline where racist bartenders and brainy scientists gave them tips on where Joel was before The Last of Us 2 started? Tommy dips out to go get revenge right after telling Ellie that it's a bad idea to go get revenge, and leaves a note. Tommy's wife Maria, despite Tommy's advice, tells Ellie, go ahead, here's a horse and some guns because, plot. Lucky that Ellie is able to find notes with codes to the gate she needs to get through just lying around nearby, and the specific code not being scuffed out like the rest on the paper she finds. Lucky that these generators are still functioning and their cords, not ripped apart or cut in half, are within reach of the electric powered doors so she could get through there. You gotta love how clickers can still charge at Ellie full speed despite Dina firing a handgun multiple times. I think the sound of a handgun would attract something that is using sound to hunt something down. But nah, that's not how we're gonna do this. I guess Ellie's footsteps are louder than gunfire. Thankfully, the infected respect the sanctimony of a synagogue and stay away from it so Ellie and Dina can play Donkey Kong Country to vine swing up and around dangerously to find the Torah. Okay, this one's for the musicians out there, but Dina starts messing with a perfectly set up and not ransacked drum kit. I don't know how it isn't destroyed or all over the place after 24 years, and she starts hitting the drums. You think making as little noise as possible would be the primary prerogative. That and how is this drum set still in tune? I used to have a drum set and it would go out of tune in a week, but 24 years and it still sounds this good? Okay. Ellie finds an acoustic guitar in a case in pristine condition and is nearly perfectly in tune as well. You would think the strings not being in sealed packaging for over 2 decades and exposed to Seattle moisture would have them sounding awful by now. You gotta love how when there's a safe around, there is always a note with the combination numbers to it right nearby, as any and all reasonable safe owners would do. You know how the infected like to make a lot of noise and jitter around and just moan a bunch? Well, this infected decided to completely close itself off in a stall, take an infinitely long, silent shit, not make any noise, only to surprise attack you when you enter the restroom. Apparently. Good thing the exact address of the building is on this keyring, or else complete strangers would never know what door it could unlock. The WLF are making, printing, and mass distributing propaganda? What for, since no other information except one cryptic message is shown? Are they trying to scare people? Are they trying to recruit others? Who knows? When they need to power on a gas generator to open an electric door, the first gas tank they check is empty because that's how it would be after 24 years. But the second one they check in the municipal building still has usable gasoline? This high security bank vault only has one combination to prevent people from getting in? I would think a key or something extra would be needed to get in because, you know, it's a bank and there's hundreds of safety deposit boxes in there. Ellie and Dina, instead of going around with their horse, were lucky enough to find still usable gas to power this still working generator and find a usable code on a written note to get the said gate open so they can get through. This infected in front of them hops the fence, not hearing the horse clopping around right behind him. But hordes of infected from earlier could hear horses clopping around in a blizzard? Ellie discovers a ripped open WLF soldier carcass, saying if a random infected killed Abby, that it wouldn't be justice. So what happens if your girlfriend Dina gets killed by a random infected while you're trying to get revenge?
Gonna cry?
Apparently, reading magazines convinces you to take any supplements and medication you can find on the ground to be able to do things like crawl faster and make more explosives. Because that's how meds and quick reading work. Tommy wiped out 2 of the WLF soldiers here, with one of them being there during Joel's death. In the unknown man's last act, he wrote the code to the East Gate in his own blood. But when Ellie and Dina arrive at the East Gate, it is neither opened or has any power going to it. Why did he write the code out if Tommy wasn't even going to use it? Unless Tommy knew Ellie was trailing behind him and left that as a note, but how did Tommy progress this far without opening the fence? Is he not restricted to follow the same tedious path as Ellie? Ellie and Dina get ambushed by an explosive. The horse is shot in the head, Dina falls downhill and goes missing, and Ellie of course gets knocked out to get tied up in a room instead of being killed on the spot. You see how persistent she is. Why not finish the job instead? They say Joel's group is actively hunting them now. So this one guy thinks it's the best solution to take Ellie to their leader Isaac for interrogation. You really want to risk turning your back and ignoring the idea of murder on a person who wants nothing more than to kill you? Dina shows up through the sky window just in time to save Ellie from being shot point blank. Man, these people have impeccable timing. Jordan sees his comrade was shot dead, stares at him for a while, then starts wrestling with Dina, who is on the floor already in pain. You have a handgun. You could have easily offed them both, seeing how quick they are to kill your friends. But nah, let's give the girl behind you enough time to cut her ropes and slice your jugular. This is bad writing because Jordan was the one that proposed and defended the idea of killing Ellie right after Joel's murder so there's no loose ends. Why was he now refusing to kill them? Add 3 cents. 2 teenage girls are able to take out a whole squad of militarized people one by crawling through some tall grass and taking gunshots to all parts of the body just to bandage the wounds and be better instantly. Ah, the beauty of being a plot-armored player character who only really gets injured in cutscenes. Workbenches to upgrade your guns somehow always have electricity so that the player can turn on a light to modify their weapons, even when power for the rest of the building is completely shut off. I will say though, going into the workbench doesn't automatically put the whole world on hold when you start modifying like a lot of other games. I tried this with enemies nearby, and I paid the price. I like that immersion. -1 sin. I will make a quick note. While I'm not savvy with guns, I did see a lot of people taking issues with Ellie and Abby using plastic bottles as suppressors for their handguns, noting that it can slightly reduce the noise, but not completely, and it would only be good for a one-time use, not 3 or more. Plus, plastic degrades after 20 years, so how is there so many plastic bottles lying around? You gotta appreciate the level of gore in this game, from the headshot physics, the blood splatter, and even the timeless turning bodies into giblets from explosions. Gotta remove 5 sins for the level of detail they put in. You know, I was gonna add a sin for the amount of explosive tripwires still active and not exploded with the amount of infected roaming around. Luring the infected into them was pretty fun. And I love the fact after blowing up an infected that they can be left as an upper torso to crawl around a bit before bleeding out and dying. They didn't pull a Call of Duty Zombies where they just roam around crawling infinitely. They are still human beings that could still die from blood loss. So I gotta appreciate that they stick to the realism of the infected still being alive, and I love the explosions. -1 sin. However, you would think they would set up those explosive booby traps on these easily scalable series of walls that could easily get somebody inside, since infected and other survivors could scale these without any issue. Plus, if an infected did try to sneak in, it would alert anyone inside of possible intruders. They find one of the WLF members named Leah dead on the floor full of arrows by the hands of the new enemy faction Seraphites, aka Scars. Lucky for Ellie, in her bag are the photos and names of everyone that was present at Joel's murder, making a very, very convenient hit list for Ellie to follow. The WLF radios in saying they are on the way, knowing of Scar activity in the area. You would think they would radio in and ask for the people at the TV station to copy or respond before relaying that kind of info that they're on the way, since anything can happen and you wouldn't want to give your enemy, the Scars, the heads up that you're on the way. But hey, hindsight is always 2020, although 2020 has been awful so far. One of the WLF soldiers goes to cut down the hanging dead bodies, with another member saying how dumb it is to do it now with possible threats in the building. This guy would be great on zombie sins. After all this fighting and they need to get out, lucky for Ellie and Dina, there is a wide open escape route for them to outrun the WLF. Even more lucky for them that a vending machine was there to blockade the door to stop them from chasing them. A pretty fantastic way to make the world feel more real, having the WLF lured into and attacked by the infected while you could just sit back and watch the fireworks, minus the sin. Also, you gotta love the fact and aesthetic of the cordyceps building its fungus in dark, dank places like subways, creating a dark and creepy environment to not only combat them, but give reason to it as well, as fungus likes to grow in areas like this, minus another sin. Fortunate that each of these subway cars are totally accessible for them to either run through or open up, shutting the subway door just in time for the infected to slam into it at the last second, cliche. Ellie gets to spectate the Shamblers in action against the WLF as she crawls through the ceiling. How lucky for her! Eating 20-year expired chips, energy bars, and soda is a great way to heal bullet wounds and broken ribs. So whoever was here before Ellie got a soda can, put a note on it with the door combination, and somehow got it back inside the soda machine without breaking the glass, and they put it in there pretty well. I mean, when Silent Hill did it, it made sense, since the fog could just alter reality. But I don't know about people in a smelly old subway tunnel that can do this just as well. This subway car falls with Ellie inside, and only one infected shows up. That was a shit ton of noise! A whole subway car just fell! So with spores flying about in the air, Ellie's mask is broken, making Dina freak out and asking to share her mask with her so they can both breathe, despite Ellie telling her right after their clam bam weed session that she is immune, even showing her bite mark to Dina. Dina does not have a reason to not believe Ellie at this point in the story, so it feels like it was there to remind gamers and viewers that forgot from earlier or all of the first game that Ellie is indeed immune to the cordyceps brain infection. Now that these two girls have had their immunity talk, the horde now conveniently starts arriving in the distance. Pretty sure you would have heard them screaming from a lot farther away, since subways are such reverberating enclosed spaces where you can hear sounds echo from so far away, not when their shadows just appear. Ellie, being chased by a horde, goes through the revolving bar door to get snagged by a clicker. Before it can do any damage, Dina kills the clicker, and its corpse jams the door. And what does Ellie do? She just stands back and stares as the horde is just pushing at the door more and more. Make distance, girl! You've lived your whole life knowing better than to just stare. Run, bitch, run! After all of this, Dina can barely stand on her feet and needs Ellie to drag her into the theater. Was she infected by those spores from earlier? Nope. Did she land on and get impaled by a metal pipe after a fall? Nah. She is dealing with very early signs of pregnancy. Good reason to go limp and not attempt to go into survival instinct mode with a horde right behind a barricaded door that could give out any second. Ellie and Dina limp across the street and get in the theater and immediately just start talking about her immunity and Dina's pregnancy. You might wanna, I don't know, make sure infected or WLF soldiers or those scars aren't already in this building before having this semi-loud conversation. On top of that, Dina goes to lie down on the couch and takes a nap while Ellie checks the place out by herself. All because Ellie says Dina is gonna be a burden for being pregnant. Girl, getting knocked up as a recon team scout is gonna be pretty burdensome when you're trying to survive out in the wilderness, if you ask me. Please don't go getting emotional when you're out and about and exposed to the elements and leaving Ellie to do all the scouting of an entire building to herself. I'm gonna add 2 cents here. Luckily for the both of them, this place is pretty damn well set up. Has a working generator to power the entire theater, no enemies, a working radio, and even, wait for it, a pristine and well-strung, well-tuned acoustic guitar. How convenient so we can have a transition into a flashback with Joel. I'm not a fan of so many flashbacks being in the game, but I was a huge fan of the many Jurassic Park references that Joel makes. They were awesome, and props to the writers who actually named what we consider the Velociraptor as the Deinonychus, I think that's how you pronounce it, on the museum plaque. With Joel just saying, nah, that's a Velociraptor. That's what it said in the movies. Since Velociraptors were actually only half the size of what the Jurassic Park movies portrayed, minus 1 sin from this Jurassic Park fan. So I'm pretty sure the theater is an outpost for the WLF, but none of them has radioed this location or visited to check on the theater. All of this while Dina has been monitoring their radio communication, learning where all the names on the pictures they found and where they are specifically. This organization sure does make it easy for their people to be hunted down. Ellie flies solo for a while until she gets to an abandoned house where a stalker surprise attacks her. Considering it's part of their nature, I'm not going to send a stalker being a ninja, but the fact that it still has a good quality bow and multiple arrows on its back seems pretty weird to me. You would think, in its erratic and jumpy nature, that the arrows and potentially bow would have fallen off its back at some point or broken at some point as well. But we need an interesting way for Ellie to attain a new weapon. Ellie climbs the fence and slightly thuds to the ground without even slightly alerting the 2 WLF soldiers or their dog, which, to my knowledge, dogs do have a keen sense of hearing. While Ellie is hunting down what she assumes is Tommy going on a rampage, a sudden hand from behind silences her to keep her quiet. Lucky for Jesse that she didn't pull out a knife and stab him out of instinct. But Jesse's here to be a companion, and these people really know how to show up at the best possible second to change the tide of the narrative just in time. Jesse devises a plan to steal their truck and get away, so they somehow get the keys to the truck, get in, and of course it has a hard time starting, because it's not the horror genre without one car having a hard time starting up. Luckily, the WLF doesn't shoot either of them in the back of the head while they start this car, even though both of them are pretty much stationary targets. While I praise the scene of Jesse driving the truck and you shooting all these people chasing you, I thought it was exciting and action-packed. But I can't help but think a few things, like, is this just trying to be Uncharted because that's by Naughty Dog as well? How and why do they have so many vehicles chasing after them at this exact moment? And how does no one shoot either of them in this chaos. They crash the truck, and this guy crawls out from the other car only to be attacked by one infected. The other infected saw him, saw an easy meal, but decide to ignore him so they could go after Ellie and Jesse at a more further distance. Why? For dramatic tension while the car restarts again, of course. The infected pour in from every direction, and somehow one dives into the truck just in time to almost bite Ellie and add more dramatic tension. Luckily, they get blown away with the door. Heading back to a flashback, Tommy teaches Ellie that shooting objects with the sniper will make sound wherever you shot since you are so far away, and the infected can't trace the original source of the sound, luring out infected to make them easy pickings as they go at the object that you shot. Smart going on the writers and Tommy's part. I never thought of something like that. -1 sin. Joel and Ellie wind up at a dilapidated building, see the door is locked, and instead of either going around to see if there's an open window or break the door down themselves, they decide, hey, this pile of roof rubble could be lifted for this small girl to crawl through. That seems like the safest route for your adoptive kid, Joel. The AI in this game is oblivious as hell to immediate danger, and infected ignore them most of the time. The AI for Left 4 Dead 2 survivors from 10 years ago feels more polished than this, and that's saying a lot. You think the AI for Joel would be a little more urgent to come to Ellie's rescue and save her life when she's being attacked. So does dying in a flashback change the course of history? How does that work? So breaking one pipe on the other side of the wall gains the attention of a bloater that crashes through. This thing must go berserk when rats are just barely scurrying around in crawl spaces. The fact that so many vending machines aren't broken into already and only have 1 or 2 snacks left is pretty crazy 20 to 24 years after the outbreak. The Washington Liberation Front relays that specifically Nora is at the hospital, convenient for people hunting her down. Ellie goes through a whole bunch of unnecessary hurdles to get this dumpster against a wall. Why not just lug a small trash can or shelf outside to ascend the wall? Or, I don't know, climb this fence or use ivy to climb other areas? Why do you go through all these hoops just to climb a wall? Ellie's fight with the stalkers was a different change of pace from the mindless infected that charge at you no matter what. I was gonna say, how can an infected learn to hide and ambush like ninjas? But at least we have a valid reason for surprise attack zombies for once. And after watching Roanoke Gaming's vid on the stalkers, it all makes more sense. -1 sin. Ellie breaks through the door just in time to avoid numerous stalkers. Another stalker appears out of nowhere and pushes Ellie through a window to a few-story fall. Lucky for the both of them that there was a raging river where the window was facing to break their fall. Ellie is able to perfectly stab this stalker while being carried away by the vicious riverway, but the stalker couldn't even get a bite or scratch in edgewise? It wouldn't be a game about zombies without winding up in a giant sewer system at some point. Ellie gets shot by an arrow the moment she gets up this ridge as a minor cutscene, but her wound, blood, and torn clothing disappeared just moments later. This WLF soldier has her back against an open body of water while listening to music or playing games. I don't know exactly what she's doing here. You would think, with all the dangers out there, she would have her back against a corner of the wall to not be attacked from behind. But whatever is most convenient for a teenage girl on a murderous rampage. The WLF soldier, who has a knife to her throat, attempts to stab Ellie and gets stabbed in return. Yeah, I gotta agree, Ellie, but I mean, if you weren't covered in plot armor, I would say you would be great for zombie sins. The fact that you can cause explosions and gunfights to happen right outside the hospital and the WLF soldiers inside be none the wiser or alarmed makes perfect video game sense, but not sense in any other fashion. Are humans really this oblivious? Are humans really this oblivious to not just whatever? Ellie finds Nora by herself, who isn't on alert by the noises Ellie made earlier. Convenient. Nora threatens Ellie, saying that firing a gun will draw the attention of every WLF soldier in the building. I sincerely doubt that, but it is a cutscene, so of course the rules are going to be different. Yeah, great idea calling the person that your group killed a little bitch right to the person wanting revenge for his death that has a gun pointed at you. Instead of shooting Nora, Ellie tries to pistol whip her to give Nora a chance to run. Why did these people who are on a murderous rampage never take the chance to kill their targets when they have the chance. Well, now at least we get a wild goose chase while she chases Nora that would be perfect to some Benny Hill. You know what, wise fish? Go ahead and roll the music. The hospital suddenly becomes open enough for this chase scene and doesn't require tons of puzzles and opening block doors and killing tons of other WLF soldiers. The WLF soldiers behind, chasing Ellie, don't shoot her before she barges through the door to take Nora hostage. Lucky for Ellie, as she was backed into a corner, that there was a pitfall right behind them that led to a cordyceps spore-filled room that Nora breathed in, so she could easily pursue the now infected Nora. While Ellie hunts down Nora, fighting off WLF soldiers and infected, Nora somehow wasn't found or attacked by any infected, so she could go isolate herself for a good old one-button interactive cutscene later on. Nora, in her final moments, not exposing Abby's location, brings up a solid point from the WLF's perspective. Joel killed a lot of people they cared about, and they view him as someone who was nothing more than a cold-blooded murderer. Ellie basically just says, "No, you." Ellie gets back to the theater with no issue. Thankfully, the WLF and infected know to not attack her or chase her when it's the end of chapter transition. So Ellie was actually wounded by that arrow in the right shoulder? Why didn't her clothes show visible damage then? We get a flashback to Ellie sneaking back to the hospital where the first game ended to find more answers, since Joel never told her what actually happened. Conveniently for her and the plot, the first bag she opens in the first room she checks has a tape recorder at the very top of a person explaining how Ellie's immunity could have made a vaccine, but how it didn't matter anymore since Joel killed the doctor. You're telling me Ellie found this specific, still working recorder 2 years after the incident, all without running into any infected? The person recording thought to record this specific line of dialogue. The recorder was perfectly timed for her to listen to all of this, and Ellie barely did anything to achieve this info. Ellie finding out the truth should have been a vital piece of information that should have taken a lot more effort for Ellie to discover. To me, this is some Fallout 76 style writing where they use holotapes to discern everything instantly. I'm gonna add 3 sins here. While they're still at the theater, Jesse says Dina needs proper medical care. Ellie agrees with him. And then just a few minutes later, they're like, "Hey, let's go track Abby to the aquarium. Dina's fine here by herself." Instead of climbing this truck to get around this giant water-filled crater, they instead decide to swim right through, making their guns and clothes wet as hell, and risking any kind of water-dwelling diseases like brain-eating amoebas that may be lingering about below. Another instance of taking the hard way around, diving into the water when they can just walk and climb over vehicles. Lucky for Ellie, there's a boat she can use to go downstream through all of Seattle, where every roadblock and gate can be taken care of, even going over ramps and barbed wire without messing up the propeller one bit. The bloater fight in the arcade was awesome, and the lead up was even better, and out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting it, because I was so tired of the same old, "Oh, there's a window above the door, but the door's locked, so I gotta get this thing on a pulley, push it against the wall, climb on that, climb through the window." But you actually fall through the floor as you push these boxes, and you fall into a boss fight. That was super neat, and a curveball from the writers and developers. Minus 1 sin. The boat finally capsizes in these torrential waves, but thankfully the shore to the aquarium was in short swimming distance at the moment this happened. Ellie sneaks into the aquarium in a route we've never seen, finds a vent to climb through, that vent breaks, she falls and makes a lot of noise, and the dog Alice from Abby's group attacks her. Despite this dog easily taking out numerous people and infected in Abby's storyline, it couldn't handle a fight with a teenage girl. No one was with the dog before or after it chased after that loud ass sound. Isn't this dog usually around people for security? No one heard an AC shaft collapsing either? Nah, we're gonna have the pregnant chick and the guy that knocked her up having an argument instead. Ellie shows up right as Mel is fed up and about to leave because Abby went off on her own to God knows where. Good timing for Ellie to end their character arcs that we haven't even seen yet. Ellie points a handgun at the both of them and tells Mel to point out where Abby is on the map, and then to Owen to do the same if they match up and if they're lying or not. If they lie, she shoots them. But I gotta say, Ellie is not thinking about this reasonably. Ellie is leaving herself open by getting so close to them. Why not ask the direct location or put the map on the ground far away in the center of the room for them to walk to and point it out to her? Nope, you gotta give them a chance to fight back and attack you, because all of these characters that have survived for this long lose all common sense in the name of narrative convenience. Ellie, the teenage girl, easily kills these hardened survivors Owen and Mel without learning anything new about Abby. But for some reason, she goes back to check out Mel's dead body and sees that she was pregnant. What? Oh no. Oh, poor thing. Why was she out here so far into pregnancy in the first place? Dina was just now dealing with pregnancy symptoms and could barely move, but this girl is out and about and susceptible to murder? Tommy finally shows up while Ellie is feeling bad over killing a pregnant chick. Lucky that the both of them knew where to go to hunt down Abby's group. They return to the theater with no trouble after all those issues getting there in the first place, and decide then and there at the theater that their leads have run dry and should just return home. So they're just giving up on revenge this quickly after executing just about everyone in those photos you found, except for Abby, the specific person that killed Joel. I mean, killing all these specific people couldn't possibly come back to shoot you. Oh. Well, Abby shows up that night to get revenge for her dead friends, kills Jesse, and incapacitates Tommy. Ellie says she knows why Abby killed Joel and understands. Abby responds with,
You killed my friends. We let you both live. And you wasted it.
Girl meets boy, what the hell are you talking about? You killed this guy brutally in front of Ellie, caving his head in with a damn golf club. You should have executed Ellie as fast as you executed Jesse and every other enemy you have come across up until this point. Well, before we get to see what happens next, guess what? It's rewind time, so we can see Abby's past in perspective over the last 3 days and beyond. Yeah, boy! Abby and her dad find a zebra bloodied and caught in metal wiring. The first game had Ellie and Joel find giraffes living naturally. Will The Last of Us 3 have 2 new survivors stumbling upon Harambe, since he may be alive in this timeline since what happened to him never occurred? Okay, controversial opinion time. But again, it's no wonder Abby wanted to kill Joel. Joel killed her father, the head doctor, who was supposedly using Ellie's life to have a chance at the cure for the cordyceps brain infection. Which, side note, Roanoke Gaming brought up a good point to me, saying that the doctor was willing to tear open a child's brain for a cure, but not attempt a spinal tap to retrieve cerebral spinal fluid that is stated in the lore to be laced with the cordyceps. But despite the moral gray area of sacrificing one child out of a few other failures they had in the past, it was all for a chance at saving humanity in their thoughts and eyes. However, to Abby and the rest of the WLF, to them, Joel didn't hesitate to murder her father and dozens of others in cold blood. I know we all watched Ellie and Joel develop together as a father-daughter combo for a whole game, and narratively Joel's death was way too swift. But again, Abby's reasoning to hunt Joel down for basically ruining what they believed to be a cure was justified, especially since he killed her father. However reckless the theme of revenge the story goes overboard with. So don't go saying Abby had no reason to kill Joel. But as to not cause more of a shitstorm in the comments section, I'll be removing just one sin. And I'm also going to get ready for people to only comment my opinion about this one specific sin amidst nearly an hour of content. Another controversy surrounding Abby is that she is apparently trans or trying to be a guy in order to push an agenda. Bro, it is 24 years into the world ending, and infected lurking around at every corner with enhanced strength to kill you. You would have to bulk up if you were going out in the harsh parts of the world to take on infected, and even worse, the scars, while also lifting heavy shit, lugging weapons and equipment, and being ready for just about anything. And to those asking, how is she even ripped, bro? The WLF have a full workout facility shown at the very beginning of Abby's story, and their available food doesn't seem to be in short supply. If you really want to start arguing about how someone is beyond ripped in a post-apocalyptic world, you should really question the Cogs and Marcus Phoenix in Gears of War. How the hell are they that ripped with barely any food left to go around? -1 sin for Abby being smart about her body as someone who regularly ventures out of her safe haven to fight infected and find supplies. I have earned a lot of respect for the Washington Liberation Front. Despite being painted as heartless savages from the perspective of playing as Ellie and Joel, their base of operations utilizes a stadium well and portions out their rations pretty equally. It's a pretty good setup for post-apocalyptic life. -1 sin. Abby ventures out with Manny, the guy who says one-liners in Spanish, Alice the dog, and Mel the pregnant chick, despite knowing of Scar activity in the area closing in. Having a pregnant chick seems like it would be a liability for scouting patrols, but whatever. The Scars attack them not long after leaving their base, but all of these guys on horseback and barricades had stormtrooper-like aim and miss every single shot. Their truck crashes through a very short stint of shrubbery and trees, and none of the Scars that were chasing them on horseback catch up or shoot at them from uphill, or even hear them go in the warehouse after they shut those big-ass shutter doors. Abby and the group go through a few warehouses, taking long and contrived routes over and through them, instead of going around. This giant metal door that Abby is using with the pulley system breaks after Manny and Alice get inside, but right before Mel was about to be right under it. Not only is it perfect timing that the pregnant chick isn't dead, but now Abby has to get herself and Mel the pregnant woman up to the roof via makeshift scaffolding with ladders and ropes and all this stuff just to get outside? Oh, thank God. I was starting to forget this was a Last of Us game, but having my playable character lug a ladder around to progress really captured the essence of the first game. Abby's group effortlessly plows through tons of Scars, only to be pinned down at a gas station by overwhelming armed numbers. Right before they're about to be swarmed and killed, a ton of WLF soldiers and trucks show up and save the day just in time. Deus Ex Machina. Through Abby's return, we can get glimpses at the WLF war against the Seraphites, aka the Scars, portrayed through numerous body bags and Scar POWs and jail cells as we see the WLF leader Isaac interrogating one of them. It's not too ham-fisted to see how this war is waning on them and works well. -1 sin. Isaac starts prepping for all-out war with the Seraphites by saying a full-out attack during an incoming storm will wipe out the Scars, but at the same time Owen is MIA after apparently killing Danny over protecting a Scar. Good timing for all this to become dramatic. Isaac orders Abby to forget about Owen and get ready to be on the front lines, but of course, nah, this is her old boyfriend, so she assumes he must have just disappeared to the nearby Ferris wheel where this flashback occurred. Yeah, let's rock this rusty old Ferris wheel cart that hasn't been maintained in 21 years because I'm a teenage boy and boys gotta be dumb and reckless. Not that the cart could snap off its hinges or all this noise could attract zombies or kill you both or anything of that sort. Just like Ellie and Joel's stroll through the Natural History Museum, Abby and Owen get to leisurely stroll through this aquarium without any infected either. You would think the infected would be drawn naturally to this place for how dark and dank it is, but luckily for Abby and Owen, they are nowhere to be found. Instead of using this revolving door or ivy in any way to climb this wall, Abby decides to go all the way around through a building instead to get, of course, surprise attacked while going through a narrow-ass crawl space. These people love putting themselves in danger and tend to forget infected even exist. After all the side routes Ellie and Abby have had to take, this doggy door in the fence seems out of place for her to easily crawl through. It's not like the bars in this specific spot were sawed off or removed, as there was no visible proof that any of that occurred. After going through this doggy door, the Seraphites begin picking off infected left and right, without the sniper also seeing Abby plop through the fence. The Scars also begin searching the area for infected at the exact moment that Abby arrives, making for perfect dramatic tension. Abby massacres buildings and blocks full of Seraphites, only to be ambushed by Big Bertha and her big hammer. After this specific WLF soldier, or wolf as they call them, killed so many of their members, surely they will kill Abby right on the spot. Who knows, because we're getting another flashback. The flashback reveals that Owen found out Joel's brother is in a settlement in Wyoming. How did he learn where a specific guy was 2 states over, almost 1,000 miles away in the post-apocalypse? Did a dead friend of Joel's visiting Seattle leave behind a bag of their diaries, life schedules, pictures, or detailed recon paths? So instead of outright killing Abby, the Seraphites drag her unconscious body to a specific noose in the dark and dank woods and get ready to hang her. But ignore her when a new character, the young Seraphite escapee Yara, shows up struggling. I understand this cult's need to make an example out of non-believers, but she has converted your believers into piles of dead bodies. Priorities, people! Kill them on the spot. Don't give them a chance to fight back. Jesus Christ. The woman orders the 2 Seraphite men to start clipping the wings of Yara for abandoning their group, with one bashing her arm to bits with a hammer. It looks brutal as hell. It sounds like it. It just, sends a chill down my spine. -1 sin for the sounds and agony of it all. However, before her other arm is crushed, a flurry of arrows take one guy out. Yara kills another with that very hammer that crushed her arm before the woman pops Yara. The silent arrows whiz by, causing her to waste ammo firing randomly in the darkened forest. And she slowly backs up into Abby, the person you haven't even started to hang yet? See? This is what you get when you Dr. Evil your victims. They come back and put you in a stranglehold with their thick brick thighs. Since the gunshots we heard were part of the cutscene, it's mandatory for hordes of stalkers to start appearing throughout the woods to chase the new trio of Abby, Yara, and the rebellious airbender Lev. They escape the forest only to be attacked by the lurking Big Bertha. She somehow knew the exact location of where Abby and her associates were, and even got to have the jump on them. And Abby somehow defeats this giant woman with a sledgehammer. So how can Abby fight Shamblers effectively and not be affected by their hurled spore bombs? Since she isn't wearing a mask and isn't immune like Ellie, wouldn't she be dead or infected by the cordyceps just by breathing it in once? Abby, after helping them, leaves Yara and Lev in the trailer to continue pursuing Owen, going through a freighter area and exploring a beached ship. Good thing that risky jump she made in the middle across the crumbling bridge had water to break her fall. Might have been easier to just have walked through the wilderness directly right of the bridge and taken a little bit more time, especially considering Abby has a huge fear of heights and falling. You would think people like Abby and Ellie, born and raised around crumbling buildings and rickety structures, would know better than to go full force at something that will break at the slightest push. Abby finds Owen in the boat that they had flashbacks in, as he confides in her how tired he is of killing people. He also has an apparent lead on Firefly activity in Santa Barbara, California, because this guy gets results faster than Google. But at least this time it makes a little more sense, as he or someone else he knows probably overheard the Firefly radio chatter or frequency at some point. But let's sideline that for a sex scene so we can get fucked so hard we are knocked right into a flashback. Now, this isn't a sin or removing a sin, but I had to say it anyway. Is this flashback during sex symbolism of Abby's sexual encounter with Owen? Coming in from the back door down a long open hallway to get to the front door to find 2 dangling dead danglers deep inside. I was almost expecting a giant penis boss fight to break through the front door. Okay, I just wanted to make a joke here at symbolism. No sins on or off, just a joke. Don't get mad. In all seriousness though, Abby's nightmare over Yara and Lev has her going back to check on them both. Coincidentally, right after Owen says he refused to kill a Scar. And that's what Abby just did. How coincidental. Because the main characters of movies, books, and games never get accidentally shot when going around corners to panicked gun holders. Just NPCs and the non-white supporting characters like Jesse and Manny. Very progressive, Naughty Dog. Yara's arm is looking bad, so Abby carries her back to the aquarium. Again, they get all this way with apparently no interference from the infected or the Scars. It's decided that Yara needs to have her arm amputated, and they aren't equipped enough to perform the procedure. So Lev and Abby decide to go to the hospital in town, and Owen asks why. Although I'm sure it was his altruism that slightly inspired Abby to save a scar anyways. Okay, now comes one of my biggest issues with the game. Abby and Lev are having to hurry up and get the medical equipment for Yara so she won't suffer from gangrene. So instead of a reasonable route around or over the river, they decide, hey, you see that over 20-story huge freaking skyscraper filled with enemy scars? Let's go all the way up it and then cross a perilous construction crane to another skyscraper that we will go all the way down, and this time it'll be filled with infected of every type. Just to get across the river, the hospital isn't a part of these skyscrapers at all. You are taking these long, dangerous routes where you can be slaughtered, fall to your death, have parts of this building collapse on you, or get infected at any point by spores or the infected themselves. I understand it's for interesting gameplay, but find a different route, you two. Climbing and descending 20 stories up and then 20 stories down seems very counterproductive when you have such a time-sensitive mission to save someone's life. Plus 3 sins. On that note, you would think the scars would have made a bridge of some sort on ground level to make it across these raging rapids, but they seem to be more focused on making pointless wooden walls and restrooms and parkour challenges on the rooftop crane. I see this long-ass ladder, and I say there will be a surprise attack during live stream, and even slowly count it down because of how predictable it is. 3, 2, 1... Boom! Called it. Again, why did the Seraphites make these weird bridges on the crane so small and unintuitively, leading to you literally walking on a small support beam, struggling to keep your balance? With how high up they are, those strong Seattle winds could easily force someone to fall off, especially the narrow bridge at the end of it. They have the know-how to keep a freight elevator and its generator working perfectly fine. But then they do stuff like this when it comes to going across a crane? I'm reporting them for OSHA violations. Wow, just wow! Abby does fall off the crane, but she falls through a glass ceiling and luckily lands in a luxury pool that is somehow still filled with water. Holy hell! That isn't even luck, that's just plot armor incarnate. As Abby and Lev are starting to go down the second skyscraper, Abby notices a room filled with spores and tells Lev to put on her mask, but not everyone has a mask readily available, so she tells Lev to sit back as she looks for one to find for her. You really think you're going to get lucky enough to find a working gas mask in this building that hasn't been touched in 24 years where infected have been roaming around with spores all up in the air? And wouldn't you know it, she finds one almost immediately. Oh wow, nice curveball, Naughty Dog. I thought she was about to find a mask that easily. -1 sin. Oh wait, never mind. Abby finds another gas mask, but this time intact. I would say convenient, but would a gas mask that's been on a dead, decaying corpse, lingering in a spore-ridden environment for over 2 decades work at that point? Wouldn't its filters have long since lost their effectiveness by now? And by that time, the spores would have gotten inside the mask, making it pointless to even put on? The boss fight against the Bloater and its numerous stalkers in this series of hallways was equal parts nail-biting, aggravating, and entertaining. -1 sin. Abby and Lev get down the second building, and after a short swim, they are at the hospital, which half of it is an established WLF base, or in the very least, they are there to get medical supplies before the war effort. But I would think Abby would have heard something about this before she had left. You just went through 2 towers and almost died in each one, and the crane. Isn't she regularly working as recon in the city? Wouldn't she have known better? Wouldn't she know not to go through those freaking towers? I do like the fact that Abby goes through this camp and we see all these nice named people and dogs that we killed as Ellie. It gives a bit more depth to the enemies you face, and for once, the hordes of NPCs you gun down actually feel a bit more real and like actual people. It didn't make me feel guilty, but it still felt genuine and that they tried with NPCs. So, -1 sin. When people recognize Abby at this hospital outpost, they say that Isaac has ordered for Abby to be forcefully returned in handcuffs because of how she went AWOL right before their scheduled war effort with the scars. You'd think Abby would have kept that in mind, but thankfully, BFF Nora is here to set her free and casually lead her to the other half of the hospital without being spotted. Instead of stealthily stealing medical supplies or having Nora just lie and snag some for her, Abby goes to the infected side of the hospital to find some? You're going to the ground zero of the epidemic in Seattle to find supplies that are most likely covered in cordyceps-carrying spores against infected that have been festering from the very beginning. You know the longer an infected has lived, that the more dangerous they become, but you're still going to make this risk instead of just having Nora get you some supplies in the back room. In the infected side of the hospital where fungus is overgrowing everything, the generators, electrical grid, and powered doors still work to a great degree despite the 2-decade-old fungus growing everywhere. After failing to find any medical supplies in multiple rooms of this hospital, Abby goes to the parking garage and finds a wrecked ambulance with a pristine box of surgical equipment that has been untouched by this fungus. Convenient! Now for the most gruesome and dangerous infected yet, the Rat King. He shows up out of nowhere since it's the end of the level, but despite its plot-convenient timing, I thoroughly loved this boss fight, from its intensity to its multi-part structure to even having an advanced stalker chip off of it to add to the challenge. As my editor Wisefish and I discussed, we wish the game had more scenarios like this to keep it more entertaining, so I'm going to take 2 sins off. Abby finally finds her way through this random garage entrance, and right as she jumps down, Lev was right there waiting for her, apparently knowing that's exactly where she would return. Lucky for Abby, since Lev was never discovered by Infected or the WLF, and shows her that the WLF soldiers are nearby on a manhunt for her. Lucky again! Abby and Lev find a boat right nearby, and it gets them perfectly to the aquarium. You think somebody with the WLF would have kept an eye on that boat since, Abby disappeared. Everyone gets a good night's sleep, and after 20 minutes of dialogue, I'm not kidding, that's how it is, Lev deserts everyone, escapes in the boat, and heads to the island base of the Seraphites to convince her and Yara's mother to change her ways? Wasn't this cult trying to kill you and literally crushed your sister's arm to the point it had to be amputated? What makes you think your mom will have a change of heart? I understand you're a kid and it's a cult and you want things to be better, but this doesn't feel genuine and feels forced in order to have Abby somehow involved in the upcoming war that she was inactively avoiding just so she could find Owen and then to help Yara and Lev. On the way to go save Lev, Abby loses track of Yara, but then runs into Manny, who is being pinned down by a sniper in the distance. What a perfect timing for her to show up to go against the sniper, and to also remind us that Manny was a character sometime in the game. This semi-boss fight of dodging Tommy's sniper skills was another banger moment. Calling back to the flashback of Tommy teaching Ellie how to snipe, Tommy shoots nearby objects so they make noise to attract the infected towards her, making a thrilling and awesome fight avoiding runners, clickers, and sniper fire. -1 sin. Although I do gotta say, how much ammo does Tommy have? You gotta love infinite ammo NPCs. After avoiding all the sniper fire, Abby and Manny corner Tommy, but don't keep an eye on their 6 while pushing the store open. For once, not thinking critically costs a character their life, but you would think they would know better and keep an eye on their back as they're trying to sneak up on them. Abby confronts Tommy, and when it seems like Tommy has the advantage on her, the one-armed Yara, who has not been around for quite a while, comes out of nowhere to blindside him. Convenient for Abby. Tommy falls into the ocean below, but Abby doesn't think to have a weapon drawn to potentially ensure he dies if he emerges back up from the water. Especially after he just killed Manny right in front of you. His blood is on your face. What happened to that raging hard-on for revenge you've had all game? But nah, she forgets about Manny right on the spot and just stares at the water and assumes, yeah, the guy with the sniper probably drowned, whatever. They procure a boat at this dock and land on the island without any interference or defense at the shore by the Scars. After either sneaking or plowing your way through the Seraphite camps on the island, which I did both, you find Yara and Lev's mom dead in a building, with Lev reeling from his actions in the corner. Good thing no Seraphites showed up before we did, or Lev would have been hanging out. As they are heading back home, a WLF finds Yara and pops her in the stomach. How did he know at first glance that Yara was a scar? Was it their clothing, since the cult kinda dresses in trench coats and rags? Because it would be hard to see their Joker smile scars in the dead of a raining night. Maybe while they were at the aquarium, they should have given them a change of clothing to not automatically be assumed to be a Seraphite. There were plenty of merch shirts in the aquarium for them to wear, but I can see why they would shoot on sight because they are in enemy territory. But still, you'd think they would have taken the extra precautions. Since it's the climax of Abby's story, Isaac appears seeing Abby protecting a scar, much like the stories of Owen, who did the same thing. That's some good narrative timing for Isaac to see, especially when Isaac starts demanding for Abby to get out of the way so he can get rid of the scar, and starts counting down to 3. Right as he gets past 2, Yara, who we thought was dead on the ground, pulls out a gun and kills Isaac on the spot. You gotta love convenient timing. The rest of the WLF soldiers right nearby respond accordingly and fill Yara full of bullets, killing her instantly. After our long journey to be able to amputate her arm to save her life, I can admit I was annoyed we went through all of that for nothing. But again, that's the harsh reality of reality. I'm just surprised Abby and Lev were able to get away in front of 4 armed people into blockadable shelter. How convenient. Abby, the person who went on a revenge quest to kill one man for killing her father and tons of fireflies, is now pulling a Joel and killing tons of her former WLF comrades to save Lev's life, this one child's life. It's sort of strange how quick she has a change of heart when it comes to children she just met, and killing dozens of her old friends in the process. I can see what they were trying to do here in the narrative experience by having Abby have a similar situation to Joel and kind of have his perspective on why he saved Ellie versus killing tons of other people. Even with Isaac supposedly dead or down for the count, it's never confirmed if he died, the war begins in full force and the island goes up in flames. It's entertaining to spectate the 2 factions we've seen throughout the game fighting it out as you pick them off or sneak past. Minus 1 sin. In the midst of all this fiery chaos, Abby decides the best course of action is to cut through a burning wood building that is about to come down. I think it would be a little bit safer just to go around it, but going around an obstacle isn't feasible in a zombie game. We need action. Abby lifts this burning debris for Lev to get through just in time for the wall to break down between them and for Abby to be partially buried under burning debris so Lev can go off on her own for a bit, but not enough to have Abby completely pinned and burn alive. And out of nowhere, this boss level human, I guess called the Scar Man, finds Lev by herself. And just like when Jordan was ambushed by Dina through the skylight, instead of insta-killing Lev with his giant sledgehammer, Scarman decides, I'm gonna be dramatic and strangle her to death because she made me mad. But you're in the middle of a war zone. I think you would just want to pop her or knock her head off with the sledgehammer. But whatever, you gotta give the main character enough time to save a child from a brutish oaf. So this boss fight has me questioning the durability of larger humans in this universe. He has his jaw nearly sliced off, his shoulder pierced by an arrow, and more, but still comes at Abby full force. You could argue that pure adrenaline kept him going so he wouldn't pass out or feel injured, and you could also argue that there was symbolism since Seraphites always have Joker-like scars across their face. But similar bosses with sledgehammers beforehand, believe me, there's a lot in the game, took direct bullets to the head and kept going. Either humans are evolving to have bulletproof skulls, or it's a boss fight. Don't think too much about it. Abby returns to the aquarium and finds the dead bodies of her friends Alice, Mel, and Owen. While she is grieving, Lev picks up something off the ground. Apparently she found, oh god damn, Ellie left behind her map that she was using to find all of her targets. That has perfect directions back to the theater her and her friends are held up in. What the hell, Ellie? With all the time Dina, Jesse, and Ellie have spent at the theater, you would think they would have secured every possible route inside to maintain their safety. But nah, Abby finds a fire escape ladder right around the corner to get inside through a window. Now we are finally back to the story at hand, with Abby pointing a handgun at an unarmed Ellie, giving Tommy a chance to tackle her down. Does every single person in this game not think to secure both threats so they can't do shit like this? You took your eyes off Tommy? Why? In retaliation to Tommy tackling her, Abby shoots Tommy in the head. You think, oh, Tommy's dead too. But I'm gonna go a bit ahead real quick and say Tommy survives this gunshot to the head, Carl Grimes style. And he didn't even bleed out while preceding events kept going on. What a lucky sumbitch. Abby and Ellie have a boss fight, with Ellie somehow holding off the hulking Abby's strength numerous times. Now this isn't a sin right here, and you don't have to pay any mind to it, but if Ellie has some sort of the cordyceps brain infection inside her, making her immune, is she a carrier that can transfer the cordyceps brain infection through a bite? Abby might be in trouble. Abby is so freaking Hulk strong that her bashing Ellie's head into the floor literally breaks it and they fall through. In the 15 whole seconds that Abby is strangling Ellie, Ellie doesn't pass out or have her neck snapped. Abby had literally broken the necks and asphyxiated dozens of grown men and women up until that point in less than half that time. But apparently, an average teenage girl's neck is a lot stronger, so Ellie gets away. As Abby has Ellie pinned down to the ground and beating her face to a pulp, Dina shows up at the last second to stop her assault. And then, as Dina is trying to stab Abby, Lev shows up at that second to shoot Dina off of her. The amount of last second saves here are so convenient. Someone in the comment section is probably having a counter for how many times I've said convenient, but oh well. Abby is about to slit Dina's throat and kill her when Ellie screams, "No, don't do it, she's purgante!" This one statement from Ellie about a pregnant girl and a puppy dog face from Lev stops Abby from killing either of them. I guess because she wanted to set a good example for Lev to not kill people so ruthlessly. But the fact that Ellie killed all of her friends should be a red flag to say, hey, maybe I should kill her so she doesn't come back looking for me again and potentially killing Lev. That and Ellie using the she's pregnant card should not work because, I mean, she killed your pregnant friend Mel. But whatever, they leave Ellie alone and that should be at the end of it, but it's not. We get a time skip to Ellie having a perfect life in a country house with chickens, goats, plenty of fencing, furnishing, a beautiful house, and Dina's baby. She is living the dream considering the state of the world. While she still deals with PTSD, which is reasonable, this would have been the perfect ending for Ellie as she learns that revenge isn't always the way. Too bad the writers wanted to add a few more hours of gameplay when Tommy shows up. Tommy, at the beginning of the game, right after Joel was murdered, told Ellie how bad of an idea it is to hunt down the WLFs across the country, saying how big their group and how well armed they might be, with Tommy telling Ellie directly that he refuses to go on a hunt for the people that killed his brother, but still going anyway, and telling his wife to not let Ellie follow him. He strictly told her that in a note. But now that Ellie has settled down with Dina in a perfect life, Tommy, half the man he once was, says, "Coming in anyway, you ain't gonna believe this bitch, but I found out where that bitch Abby is. She's all the way up in California. I had some informants out there. You need to go get revenge for Joel. I know she almost killed you in the past, but you need to go do it now. If you ain't doing it, you're spitting on Joel's grave. You wouldn't want that now, would you? Me? I can't go. You see, on account of I ain't working. Things ain't working too good these days. But you need to go do it because just do it." What the hell? Did that bullet in your head make you change rationale about Ellie seeking revenge? Tommy discovered Abby's location is a beached sailboat in Santa Barbara, California, through a wandering trader that he talked to. Apparently, he has feelers going out and finding specific people over 1,000 miles away. Ellie abandons her peaceful life with Dina because Tommy's right, revenge! And heads out by herself on a 1,025-mile trek to California. How she survives this, I have no clue, considering the amount of infected and murderous groups both Ellie and Abby run into just walking down a block or two in Seattle, disregarding her need for food, water, a place to rest every night, and possible medical supplies, how did she get to Santa Barbara unscathed? Maybe Ellie and Abby have fast travel enabled during transitions. Who knows? It's a game, why question it? Abby has a lead to a specific address because she traded a gun to a random person. They go there, find a hidden basement with working electricity, a radio, and a list of frequencies to tune into. I can give the convenience of the basement of this house a lot of leeway, as this may be a remote way for the Fireflies to find more recruits, having about 200 people at their base asking Abby to rendezvous at a certain location. The Fireflies keeping this communication point to find more people hidden behind a dresser is actually pretty smart and inconspicuous, -1 sin. While it seems like a happy ending is in store for Abby and Lev, nope! A surprise attack at the front door by Dog the Bounty Hunter, leading a last-minute faction called the Rattlers, knocks them both out to cut to black. You gotta love the last-minute addition of factions in these games. Ellie arrives at the beach's sailboat, unharmed and looking healthy after a few months of walking and scrounging for food and water across over 1,000 miles. Like always, instead of continuing down the Santa Barbara streets, Ellie decides to climb up a building and enter a huge house where the infected are more likely to be wandering about. Dog the Bounty Hunter has this rope trap set up in this one specific spot that Ellie decided to squeeze through, keeping her held upside down as she gets a stab wound to the stomach. Lucky for him, I guess, that she went to this specific spot. I didn't see any other traps the whole way here or anywhere nearby where she was trapped. Ellie passes out for a while until 2 men show up in the distance for her to whisper Abby. I don't know how they heard this, but they did. They cut her down instead of tying her up beforehand, and the smaller guy backs up into a live hanging clicker. You're telling me this clicker right here was alive the whole time that Ellie was hanging upside down? It wasn't trying to get free from its binding, it wasn't struggling, or it didn't even go towards Ellie when she got pulled up the tree screaming from her wounds? Okay. Ellie laughs at the tiny dude to harm his ego, but why does he grab Ellie and put her in a situation where they both could get bitten? Ellie slyly pushes him into the clicker and he dies. This guy right here has survived up until that point with how stupid he is. Ellie shoots Dog's leg, and in a desperate plea for his own life, he apparently heard Ellie whispering Abby and tells her that they picked up Abby a few months ago. He tells her exactly where she needs to go and in which building that Abby is being held in, because the game is almost over and we need someone conveniently to tell Ellie exactly where Abby is after her long journey. I never understood groups that keep infected chained up out in the open like this right next to their base. You're risking them in their constant erratic state, breaking the chain and potentially biting one of your comrades? For what reason? Home defense? Rudimentary alarm systems because they growl at living things? No, do not do that, especially since all Ellie has to do is lightly tap the chain to release them. Ellie is able to take out a majority of the Rattler gang all the way to the prisoner tower, taking bullets, shotgun pellets, Molotovs, and more, not sustaining any critical damage. But when she finally gets to the jail cells, takes the worst damage from a sneak attack from a baseball bat. Ellie is able to knock back the assailant close enough to the jail cell for the prisoners to choke her out. The prisoners, now free to fight back against the Rattlers, tell Ellie that Abby tried to escape and was sent to a torture area called the Pillars further down. From here on out, because of one stab wound and one baseball bat hit, Ellie will be limping, battered, and worn out as she approaches the final destination of the game. I'm gonna say it again, but I'm surprised she didn't end up this way at all during her 1,025-mile walk. She finds Abby hanging from a pillar by her rope-bound arms, starved, dehydrated, and withered into a pathetically sad sight. Ellie cuts down Abby, and surprisingly, Lev is still alive at this point for Abby to cut her down as well. After who knows how long of this torture, Abby still somehow has the strength to carry Lev away. Why would the Rattlers have a waterfront with getaway boats positioned right over the hill from the pillar torture area? You would think they would have their ultimate punishment locked away and nowhere near an easy escape for anyone that somehow breaks free of their confinement. Abby, who has dealt with enough and just wants to live and move on, ignores Ellie's demand for a fight of revenge. But Ellie threatens Lev's life if she isn't satiated for a fight to the death. None of this makes sense outside of the notion that revenge is pointless and bad that the story is forcing down our throats. And this makes Ellie as a mindless character devoid of her actual personality and sense of survival that has kept her alive all her life. To be just purely idiotic in her weakened and injured state that you want to get into a fist fight? If you wanted her to die, you would have used any number of weapons you have at your disposal to end it there and then while she was bound on that pillar. But it's the final fight and it's more honorable, I guess, or satisfying to win hand-to-hand combat, even though Joel did not have an honorable death at the end of that golf club. In the middle of the fight, Abby is able to bite off the tips of 2 of Ellie's fingers, not to come out of this fight without some kind of scar. And right before Ellie successfully drowns Abby in the water, she has a flashback of Joel on a porch that convinces her right there and right then to stop killing Abby because revenge bad. It won't bring back dead people. Look, I get it. I understand the narrative symbolism of this whole scene. 2 people consumed by hate and anger end up broken and scarred by their thirst for revenge. But Abby had refused to kill Ellie 2 separate times, especially after Ellie had killed most of her friends. So we get to see Abby freely leave into the fog and disappear with Lev, leaving behind Ellie after her second attempt at revenge, who ends up all alone in the fog with nothing left for her. I get all of that, but it doesn't feel reasonable or earned at this point. Symbolism and great cinematography does not make the lead up to this point any better or more realistic. Ellie, injured as hell from a baseball bat to the ribcage, a stab wound to the stomach, and 2 bitten off fingers, is able to escape the Rattler's base as it is in flames from a prisoner war while it makes tons of noise from explosions and gunfire. She's able to slink away from a war and all the swarming infected that come to this noise in Santa Barbara, and not only that, but she makes the over 1,000-mile walk back to her perfect home, and she's perfectly fine, not killed or injured by any number of infected across the US. But Dina, the baby, the animals, everything that made this a perfect ending and a perfect place to live was long gone. So Ellie goes upstairs to predictably find Joel's guitar still there to play in perfect tune and trigger one final flashback before Ellie leaves the home and guitar behind, finally coming to terms with both Joel's death and the life she gave up trying to seek revenge for Joel. I like the imagery here, but again, I just can't like it too much because everything felt unnecessary for the last few hours. So before these sins are over, I have to give a few final notes for the end. Everything that followed Ellie and Dina's happy life at the dream home felt so rushed and forced. It would have been fine with Ellie accepting what happened at the theater and settling down in a happy ending amongst the crippling darkness of this reality. I know not everyone wants a happy ending because it's pretty generic, but Tommy showing up saying, "Do it," out of the blue felt awkward as hell, especially for her to travel over 1,000 miles by herself and then find Abby to kill her after everything that's happened. And then what? Have some kind of bitter lesson about how revenge isn't worth it as you stare at her dead body? The idea of revenge isn't worth it would have been easily driven by Ellie living her life happily with Dina in this beautiful homestead just as much. But the writers were like, nah, we can't have a happy ending and we need a little bit more action and a couple more hours of gameplay. So you know what? Ellie, go do some stupid shit. Go lose your fingers, go lose your girlfriend, and lose the perfect life. Cool. Now, switching to Abby's ending, everything involved with the sudden inclusion of the new faction of the Rattlers capturing Abby and Lev right as they were going to find a Firefly outpost wasn't that bad. I would have liked them to get to the outpost and, had a cliffhanger of what they would do there, but them rushing all this information about this group called the Rattlers, how they enslave and torture others, chain up infected outside their base, and their biker gang-like nature was just too random for the final hours of the game. Honestly, having the cut right after Abby is knocked out would have been a perfect up-to-interpretation scenario, considering the two guys that attacked Abby and Lev right after radioing the supposed butterflies. So people could either interpret these two guys as part of a group that is luring people into a trap with a fake beacon of hope at the radio, or letting people think what was actually true in the game, that the remnants of the Fireflies are still out there and regrouping, while this different faction known as the Rattlers has captured them. Imagine an ending, a scene of Ellie playing Joel's guitar with Dina and their baby smiling, with Ellie flashing back to Joel, knowing she is doing what Joel would do. I know, a pretty sappy feel-good ending. And then right after that, cutting to Abby behind bars in a dark environment, angry and screaming and yelling for answers, wanting to know where Lev is. Or it could show her trying to escape from the Rattler's base with Lev, only to fail, and ending on a possible cliffhanger, giving room for a possible DLC of Abby and Lev's time as prisoners. Yes, I know the notion of cliffhanging into a DLC for a complete story or sequel seems greedy or lame, but it's better than what we ended up with. The story involves Abby and Lev getting to know the other prisoners to eventually and slowly start a prison riot or revolution that ends similarly to the background noise of The Last of Us 2's ending, the base going up in flames, with the gang members going to war against the prisoners, with the noise of gunfire and explosions drawing in large hordes of infected to fight off as well, reminding us that there are indeed zombies or infected in this zombie game one last time. Eventually, the prisoners would win, and Abby possibly leading these tortured souls together to start over and make a new society in this base, since the WLF is no longer an option for Abby to go back to, or she could just go off on her own with Lev and make that a cliffhanger that we could leave off on. But to have Ellie swoop in out of nowhere, wipe out a portion of the gang by herself, start a prison riot, unintentionally save Abby, and have them duke it out with fists and knives doesn't seem right or rational. It just seems too stupid for both the characters. In conclusion, the ending and characters who have survived against all odds up until this point throw everything away 24 years into the cordyceps brain infection outbreak with all these infected out and about, including a safe place to live, people to protect and protect you, and going against every single natural survival instinct because you're angry. Nope, I don't agree with any of it. 10 more sins and I'm finally done.
Wow. Why didn't you just go home? That's your home! Are you too good for your home? Answer me!
Well, your sense of right, wrong, fair and unfair will always be tragically skewed.
Stop.
Oop.
Tripwire.
Step.
I got it.
Still looks pretty though. Oops. Lol. That's funny. Dying in a flashback.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Where the hell did you come from?
Oh, and some nasty stuff in there. There looked to be a bite almost. It looked as if Tyson bared his teeth at one stage in the exchange.
I gotta go back. Can I make that jump? Let's go. Alright, you guys ready? I'm gonna hit square a bunch. 1, 2. Yeah! Why did that scare me? Jesus Christ, I jumped for a second. I was like, what the fuck is that? Is that a new fucking infected crab?
Oh, it's just a bad dream!
Oh, get him, boss. Get him. gonna get him, Skeeter. Oh, is she behind there? Oh, nope, she's not there. Oh, almost. Almost. She's around here somewhere. Oh. Is she behind the bed? Oh, there she is. Jesus.
Call me Mr. Pig!
Damn. This will be the last thing you see.
The others.
The last thing you see is the life drains from your body.
I sighed.
My sides are hurting too from laughing so hard.
Tricks.
Imagine this is the last thing you see before you die. That's your last sight.
You wanna know how I got these scars?
I'm the Joker, baby!
See, there's a sequel. Wasn't as good.